Hello everybody, I'm the Blood Claw Lizard, so I'm just attempting to put together a parts list for a number of gaming PCs because for gaming desktop computers there are like entry level, mid-range, and high-end gaming PCs, so I'm trying to put together a parts list for some of them, just suggested builds. Alright, so I'll start off with the entry level ones, so the uh, cheap entry-level gaming PC with an Intel processor would be something like this, with a Corsair CV450 450 watt power supply unit. I've used a Corsair power supply unit. It still works today even after like over 2 years, so I can trust Corsair's power supply units, and 450 watts is honestly more than enough for a lot of entry-level graphics cards. As for the processor, it would be the Intel Core i3-10100F. Now, yes, I know the Intel Core i3-10100F is a really old processor. It came out in 2020, but it has 4 cores and 8 threads, so it's still good for gaming, and it's really cheap right now. For the graphics card, yes, I never thought that I would recommend the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1630, but it's so cheap that uh, I just have to recommend it. It's like the cheapest graphics card that can play games, and then it has like 8 gigabytes of RAM. And all in all, I think this whole thing would cost like 2,200 to 2,400 for this entry level Intel gaming PC. So for the AMD side, I would go with two options actually. First option would be to have 6 core AMD Ryzen 5 processor as shown over here, but no discrete graphics card. So this computer can kind of play games, but due to the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G's limited power in terms of graphics processing ability, I would recommend playing only at like 720p or 1080p low settings. It will have 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it has a 650 watt power supply unit. The reason why I put in a 650 watt power supply unit is because um, this could turn into a decent mid-range gaming PC in the future if like somebody wants to upgrade the graphics card by adding a new graphics card. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM for now, but I mean people can always upgrade it to 16 gigabytes in the future. Um, if you ask me, this whole thing might cost around 2,500 to 2,800 ringgit. Now, for this second option, it would have a slightly, actually, I'm not sure if it's an older generation, but it has the AMD Ryzen 3 4100, which is good enough to play games. It has 8 gigabytes of dual channel RAM, and this cheap graphics card, which can still play games, the 1630, it would cost um, probably a bit more expensive than the Intel one before this, so 2,500 maybe. Then for this mid-range gaming PC, I'm going with an Intel Core i5-11400F and an AMD Radeon RX 6600 and 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's similar for the AMD Ryzen 5000 series one over here, but it swaps the processor with an AMD Ryzen 5 5500, and then well, these two would cost around maybe 4,000 to 4,800 ringgit just to be safe. For this mid-range gaming PC with the 12th generation Intel Core i5 processor, well, this one would probably cost a bit more than the Ryzen 5 5000 series one, but it probably has better performance. Then we'll move on to the high-end gaming PCs. So this one is like if I want a cheap high-end gaming PC, you would have the AMD Ryzen 7 5700X 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070 Ti. I wanted to put in a 3070, but it has the same price. I mean, the model I looked at had the same price as this 3070 Ti, so I thought, well, why not pick the 3070 Ti? And it has an air cooler, an aftermarket air cooler, simply because I think the processor didn't come with like the CPU cooler, a free CPU cooler. For the Intel 12th generation one, I mean the only difference would be the processor. Intel Core i7-12700, and the motherboard, which would be like a B660 motherboard, since it's impossible to overclock this. And the power supply unit has to be upgraded to an 850 watt power supply unit. The Intel processor just consumes more power. Then here's the ultimate high-end gaming PC with the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3090 Ti. Yes, this one would cost like above 8,000, I guess, unlike the beginner entry level, beginner high-end gaming PC, which would be around 8,000 to, yes, 9,000. Then for the Intel one, only the processor is different. It's the Intel Core i9-12900K, and then the motherboard is also different. Well, this thermal grizzly cryonaut thermal paste may not be needed if like um, this this CPU cooler has the thermal paste, but well, cryonaut is like one of the best thermal pastes out there. So that is it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and please subscribe so you don't miss out on new content. Thank you for watching this video.